And hello, everybody. Welcome back to Talking About Survivor with Christiana Ellis and Mike Mayteen. I am the first one.
And I'm the other.
And we're here to talk about episode 1 of the brand new season, Survivor Edge of Extinction. Are you excited?
I think so. I mean, it seems. Not to jump ahead too much, but literally the least interesting character has already been voted off. So
yeah, that doesn't.
that made me
hurt.
happy.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we didn't have to stick around and see more. I mean, she will be around more.
Yeah.
But she will be humbled, I think, a little bit, which may make it less.
I'll admit to being a little bit concerned, and obviously we'll get more into this later, but my concern is that if the reason that I think you and I are both agreed that she's not as fun to watch because she just kind of doesn't get along with anybody and doesn't really seem to even mesh with what they're trying to tell her about why it wasn't working, but I don't know that that attitude will be improved by having her be by herself in harsh conditions with no food. Like, isn't that just going to make her more and more miserable?
I was thinking that it might, just at least for some of the season previews or whatever, that it might have a different effect in that, it might humble her a little bit to have to survive that and kind of break down sort of that. Because there is a little bit, it did feel like a little bit of a faux tough exterior that she was putting up. That was kind of annoying with people that I don't know that she realized she was doing it. Like, it didn't seem like she understood.
Yeah, I agree.
And so maybe that breaks down a little bit and she kind of reflects on that. That was my hopeful, because I don't like just, I didn't enjoy watching her, and I didn't want to watch her continue to interact in the way that she did.
Right, yeah.
Not that I would have turned the season off. I just wouldn't. That was not a storyline I was looking forward to, and I was actively rooting for her to be voted off.
Well, we obviously let's circle around back to that, just because obviously there will be a lot more to talk about with that. But as far as the new season, I know that the typical pattern for me is that as much as I love Survivor while it's in season, as soon as it's out of season, my brain just kind of shuts off and stops thinking about it, usually. So whenever it actually comes back and I sit down to watch the first episode, I feel like I'm always surprised anew, like, oh yeah, Survivor! I'm not sure where that comes from, but it's a pleasant feeling, so I'm not complaining. So we'll have to see what the new twists contribute to the formula, but I'm certainly very glad to have the show back.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think of it the same way that you do, in that, I love watching it in season, but that's why, like, sometimes, I have to go back and even remind myself of these characters who are, have played before and remember, like, oh yeah, what happened with them? Because I just shut it off. It's not something I really even consider as part of. It's just not part of my life when it's not on.
Well, the truth is that there's been so many seasons now that it's very easy for returning players to kind of start blending together in our heads. Like, some of them we remember better than others. Like, I remember Aubrey and David pretty well. I like Joe, but he kind of does blend in my head with Ozzy a little bit. Just they have kind of a superficially similar look, and they were both the, win all the challenges, strong, helping out at camp guy, right? Like, they both kind of did that role and then have kind of a similar look. So,
right.
And then, I certainly recognize Kelly Wentworth's name, but like off the top of my head, without having done any research, I couldn't really remember any specific thing that she had done.
Right. That's kind of what I'm saying too, and that's what I'm saying. You're right, but it's a combination of the two things you just mentioned, and that we don't actively really think about it very much when it's not in season. and there's been a lot of seasons and a lot of people. So when you're not actively thinking about them the majority of the year, that you tend to forget them.
Yeah. Well, and the thing too that like if anyone is watching this or listening to this and you're brand new to talking about Survivor as opposed to I don't know, any of the other many Survivor podcasts or streams there are out there. Like, we're not the ones that do exhaustive research and then hunt down former contestants to do interviews and that sort of thing. We are watching casually because we like the show and then we like to talk about it. So, no apologies for not having exhaustively researched the returning players so that we can rattle off everything they did.
No, we don't come into it with any. We don't have an agenda. We don't have. I mean, it's pretty freewheeling.
Well, I have an agenda, but it's secret.
Don't you just have notes that you write during the show? Yeah,
I'm kidding. But
yeah, I mean, we take a few notes, we remember them, and then we kind of freewheel what we thought about everything.
Right.
That's about it.
Yeah. So we started with a setup that we've had similar before in the sense of everybody's on a big boat and, we meet a couple of people, but the basic scenario is going to be you have 2 minutes to grab a bunch of stuff and get it to your little boat. We met right away. We met War Dog, and who is, like he's the military guy and he knows that, like he knows he kind of, like that's sort of obvious about him, but he's also going to law school, but he's like going to maybe keep that a secret, I guess. And then we meet Wendy, who immediately stands out with the dyed hair and talking about being an Ultra fan. And then obviously we learn more about her later, but that's really kind of all we hear in that initial intro. Then we meet our returning players. We've got David, Aubrey, Wentworth, and Joe. It's interesting. I didn't actually look at the whole list. I don't think there was another Kelly. So maybe just because there in the past have been seasons where she was on there and there was another Kelly, so that's why Wentworth. But I don't know. The rules for who gets nicknames and who doesn't seems arbitrary a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean that's what I don't remember there being another Kelly. I think it's just that's how they refer to her. Just in the Survivor lexicon, and so that's how she is.
That makes sense. So as Probst introduces each of them to the new players, he introduces Wentworth as the first woman to find 2 idols, and then she used one in a record-setting blindside. He mentions David, who started off scared of everything on day 1, but turned into a dominant strategic force. Talks about Joe, who always had a target on his back, but the tribes he's been on have won 16 challenges. And then Aubrey, who cried in the shelter, but overcame and lasted 76 of the 78 days that she could have played, which I feel like is a sort of an awkward statistic to describe, but it's actually pretty cool. And just meaning the 2 seasons that she was on, she made it all the way to the jury, all the way to the, the final 3 in one, and then she was second to last eliminated on the other. So, but for the total 2 seasons she played, she made it, she was on it a lot. She didn't get eliminated early.
Right. She essentially played all but one day or whatever. Yeah.
2 days, according
2 days. To... yeah, all but 2 days. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that was pretty cool. I thought it was interesting that, maybe it's just, what they chose to show us, but at least initially here, we didn't get any negative reactions from the new players of oh man, I couldn't believe it was so-and-so, or oh man, new players, maybe they just chose, if anyone did react that way, they just chose not to show it, but it seemed pretty universally positive. Everyone was really excited by who showed up.
Yep.
So our tribes are the blue tribe. The blue buffs are Manu, and the orange buffs are Kama. Kelly and David are on the blue tribe, and Aubrey and Joe are on the orange tribe. And we jump right into the whole boat thing. Is it just me, or was there just like a lot more loose produce this time, leading to a whole lot of it just floating away on the ocean?
Yeah, I mean, it's not always done this exact same way, but where they had like they throw it literally overboard, and then they have to then jump overboard and corral it. It's not just like, and I know they've done it. There've been variations of this, but yeah, it just felt like there was a lot of loose stuff.
Yeah, like I think in the past, maybe there were more lids on things, or maybe people were just in this one more aggressively just tossing whole crates overboard instead of like lowering them down or something like that. Um, it was a higher jump than I think the boats have had sometimes. Um,
Yeah, and there's been other times where they've had like a life raft or something, and they like throw it onto that.
right, yeah, like you can lower it down to someone who's standing on the raft or something instead of the
Right.
rowboat being, 30 feet away. But in any event, there was a couple of those overhead shots where you're just like, yep, that's a lot of fresh produce just drifting away on the tides.
Yeah.
One interesting detail from Dalton Ross's write-up, I read his recap of this episode. Apparently, he also wrote a lengthy behind-the-scenes thing about that whole start that I didn't read, but the highlights were in the recap, and one of the things he mentioned is when we see Keith struggling a little bit, not a strong swimmer, and he gets helped. Apparently, that went on a little longer than we saw, and Probst actually had to yell at his tribe to go back and help him.
Wow.
Yeah, so. I mean, to be fair, they're all got a lot of adrenaline going, and, they're focused on what they're doing. They're not necessarily watching to see if their tribe mates are having trouble swimming.
Yep.
I was really happy, though, the payoff a little bit later, though, where Reem and Wendy helped him, coached him a little bit, and it seemed like he made a lot of progress in what apparently seemed like a pretty short amount of time.
Yeah, and we obviously don't know why, how long they spent with it, but you are correct. The way that it came together, it did look like you said they made some progress very quickly. So.
So that was nice, even though the friendly relationship between those three didn't exactly produce happy endings in this episode. But so of course we had, that's everybody's running. The only other detail I think from that sequence is that we have a guy who we later learn is Ron, who grabs a secret advantage envelope that fell out of one of the crates. Apparently there was also another advantage thing that had to do with, it was a note that said if you dive under this buoy, there's a crate of canned goods. And apparently Joe got that for the Kama tribe, but it wasn't shown in the episode. That was also from the Dalton Ross recap. So, on that note, let's talk a little bit about Joe, because, at camp, as soon as we hear Joe talk, he's immediately talking about wanting to kind of leave the Joe Amazing thing behind him and try not to stand out too much. And he is so bad at not standing out.
Yeah, I mean, it's just funny that he even decided that was going to be a strategy. Like,
yeah.
It's so unnatural for him. It's just not.
It's like, man, look, maybe you just need to run with it. We talk about, a repeated pattern on Survivor over and over again is that when people try to follow a strategy that doesn't come naturally to who they are, it usually crashes and burns. People end up with strategies that are in line with their natural personalities a lot of times. Because when you're deprived, you revert to patterned behavior, right?
Right.
And so it's kind of cool, actually, that his default is being the good guy you can depend on. I mean, that's kind of cool. He can't help himself but to be the guy who will get that for you. You know, that, you know, oh, yeah, yeah, I can take care of that. No problem. Oh, sure. Here, I'll show you how to do that. No problem. Oh, sure. I'll dive down under that buoy to get us some canned goods. No problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotta love him, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
a silly thing to try to do. So.
Well, yeah. So I think it's just literally amusing that even when he proactively decides not to do that, he does it anyway. So, but I don't know. It's kind of endearing. As we have everyone getting to camp, we actually start with the Manu tribe in the Blue Buffs, and we have Rick, aka Devons, aka Rick Devons. I don't. It seemed like the little subtitle said Rick, but then Probst called him Devons. So I'm not sure if the show has decided which they're going with. But
Yeah.
anyway, he is the news anchor with the dad bod. And he just talks about being a big fan and being glad to be there. We have a little bit of David and Kelly Wentworth talking about, you know, their shared difficulty that, you know, they're obviously going to be targets. Can they trust anyone? But then Wentworth is talking about needing to be proactive and wanting to have bonds with everyone. And David is greatly bemused to be not only the person who people actually come to for advice, but to also be the person who actually has advice to offer. He's like not a role he's used to.
Yeah.
I liked that. I like him. I'm glad he's back.
Yeah, I do. I like David.
Yeah. And then this is where we learn a bit more about Wendy, including her mild Tourette's with OCD. And I thought that her whole explanation of that, like in the confessional, was just very charming. You know, when she's talking about the different tics and how sometimes they chain together, and for her, and she kind of describes it as combos. I thought that was kind of like,
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun.
it was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a little bummed that she's kind of gotten herself on the outs already, because I like her otherwise. She seems really fun, but I think she alas kind of put all her eggs in the wrong basket, so to speak, right off the bat, and that's probably going to be difficult to recover from.
Yeah, I agree. I think she was, she was much more entertaining to watch than Reem.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like you said, she's endearing. I liked her, but she has the combination of like not fitting in with them, like sort of picking the wrong side, also not being not so far has not appeared to be a very good, strong challenge player. So it's going to be really difficult for her to recover if they continue to lose. Now, if they can win a couple in a row, and maybe people can start to she can start to have some time to build new relationships, then maybe that helps her. But
I hope so. We shall see. Back over at the Kama tribe, this is actually where we had Joe talking about, what we covered already with the putting Joe Amazing away, and then sure, I'll help you with fire the first day before we've even got the flint yet. No problem. And it's clear that everybody seems really happy that he is so helpful and that it's good news for their tribe, which probably is. And even though it was, I think it was the only thing that we had. So we meet Aurora very briefly, just long enough for her to say, "I'm gay and I'm still on Team Joe."
yes,
Which is a good line. I mean, but I don't recall if we got anything else from her in the episode.
no, we didn't spend a lot of time with this tribe at all, really,
Yeah.
because we only had the hour.
Right, and we went
and one
into
talent. Yeah,
it was only the 1 hour premiere this year, this season, and not only that, but half the episode was after the challenge.
right.
We went to the commercial after the challenge at like 36 minutes, and so into
Yeah,
the hour. So
yeah, and essentially exclusively spent it with the Manu tribe.
yeah, exactly. But obviously that's kind of how it always is when we're starting off a new season. We get little snippets from everybody. Also, similarly entertaining was Julie from New York City, who has no outdoor skills whatsoever, except that she once peed in Central Park. Apparently, I think that the fact that she basically justifies it as being an emergency and then does not elaborate is the precise correct amount of detail for that story. Just for it to be funny.
Yeah,
It was an emergency. You don't need to know anymore.
yeah, that was a pretty funny anecdote.
And then this is where we also got Ron, who's an older guy. I don't. If we learned his profession, I didn't write it down. But he's the one that found the secret advantage, and it was kind of two-stage, but he just went and pursued it all right away. So he got the envelope that says dig 3 feet east of your tree mail, and he goes and finds another envelope right away. And I really like this idea, the advantage menu, where he can choose one of those 3 things. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that was a neat addition, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, I think until he feels like he needs one or it's going to expire otherwise, I don't think there's any reason for him to pick one any sooner than that. Like, I think hang on to it until, it's going to expire otherwise, or if you feel like you need it. But I think that the easiest one to play probably is Steal the Reward, because like the other tribe won't like it, but well, okay, I take it back. Maybe I was
Yeah.
unclear. I'm thinking about it now because I think my instinct was assuming that Steal the Reward basically just like would sort of just reverse the outcome of a reward challenge, but that's probably not what it is. It's probably just him, right? Like if the other tribe gets the reward, he gets to share it too or something?
No, I mean it wasn't really clear on from
Yeah.
what we saw, right?
Yeah,
No, I feel
well,
like it means it. I still think it means reverse the outcome of a reward challenge,
yeah.
and I think that could be. I mean, it may even be whether you probably because when does it? Did we hear when it expires? I didn't put enough notes about
The
it.
third tribal council is the last time it can be used.
Yeah, I think that definitely means that you reverse the outcome of a reward challenge and take the other tribe's reward.
That's a pretty big deal, though. I feel
Well,
like it would be
remind me
more
of the other two. I didn't take very good notes
Yeah,
on
so
them.
so there was that one where it was a little bit unclear. I think maybe maybe another way it could work is like if the other tribe is getting a reward, then you like steal one person's spot. Like you get to go in place of one of the people on the other tribe.
Well, but no, because most of these rewards are like fishing gear and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Like,
yeah.
because that's why I said when you said it was the third tribal council is when it expires,
Mm-hmm.
they're not those kind of rewards. They're like
Yeah.
blankets. So I
Yeah.
think you
No,
could
you're
take
right.
the
Yeah.
blankets. Yeah, and the
Anyway, so I guess
Yeah.
they didn't explain that very well, or they just didn't. It didn't come up, so they didn't feel the need to go into detail. But the other 2 options were an extra vote or individual immunity that has to be announced before the votes are read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think I mean if you feel like you're in danger, you use the other one. Otherwise, if
Mm-hmm.
you're well, I don't know that you'd ever use steal the reward unless you felt like super confident on that third tribal, that third
Mm-hmm.
day.
Yeah.
But you'd want to have it because the reward comes, well, especially if they happen at the same time through the first 3 tribal councils.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you do that? Like, if your tribe just lost, you would have lost the immunity and the reward, you'd probably want to hold on to it in case you needed the individual immunity that night, as opposed to just taking the reward.
Yeah.
Unless you were just like felt super confident, you know.
Yeah, it's so
Or if you thought by taking the reward that would help ensure that you didn't get voted.
yeah, or if it was just something you felt like was just really desperately needed. But then again, like if your tribe, well, I suppose if it's the first three, we're probably talking about episodes that don't have a separate immunity and
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's not first. It's together. So you would have lost both. Why would you?
So,
knowing you're going to tribal council that night, you don't really want to take the reward when you could have an immunity.
Yeah. So this menu, like, I'm almost turning around on it. Not that it's negative necessarily, but that it's messy. It's like, what are the likely outcomes for it? And it seems like a greater than 50% number of possibilities involve it just not being used for anything.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like at least at the beginning, like just from the game theory of it, you would you would just hold on to it until that third tribal council, and then you would just use immunity on yourself.
Yeah.
Unless in the second tribal council, like you knew you were at risk.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, and then for that matter, if you thought you were safe, it would probably be better to not play it, just because then it sort of like, oh, you had a secret thing that you didn't tell us about.
Well, that's where it gets back to interesting. Like if you're thinking, if you're that kind of a Survivor player where your head's in that, and you feel like you're going to be safe, rather than not play it and hide it, is there more weight in it for you to steal the reward and maybe not say that there was a menu of choices, just say, hey, I found this advantage, I had to use it here, and it's steal the reward, so I'm taking the reward.
Yeah. Well, there's also extra vote. Like if you feel like there's disagreement in your tribe or who it's going to be, and you're pretty sure it won't be you, but you want to make sure that it's someone else. Anyway, I guess we'll see how it plays out, but it seems likely that it will turn into nothing, which is a little disappointing for any sort of a wrinkle. But I don't know. It's interesting to toss that in there.
Yeah, and maybe as it goes along, and there's different scenarios. Maybe it changes what it is, and maybe there's some more interesting menu combinations going down. But yeah, now that we've talked about it, it doesn't seem as cool as it originally did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see. It could still be cool. It's just something where smart play would almost make it less useful.
Right.
But we'll see. So in the meantime, we get a little bit of discussion from Joe and some of the other Kama tribe members about what could Edge of Extinction mean, and it's a total waste of a scene because nobody knows the answer, and it's kind of just like, I wonder what it is. Guess we don't know. That's 45 seconds of this episode we don't have anymore.
I feel like that was left in there to remind us, the audience, that they also are unaware.
Remember, there's a mystery. Oh, okay. Yeah, they don't know what it is either. That's true.
That even once we know what it is, they continue to not know what it is because no one can tell them what it is because they don't come back from it until a later point.
Yeah, that was one of the things that Dalton Ross brought up too, which was that in the Redemption Island seasons where people could come back, everybody knew that was the deal from the beginning, right? So it was very straightforward. Everybody knew, like, that's how it works. But
and people, so you could make decisions based on knowing that was an outcome of sending somebody off.
Yeah, but here, for it to be unknown, we'll see how it plays out. But like, as I said at the beginning, I'm a little bit concerned only because we've discovered in past seasons that when conditions are such that make the players miserable, like when it's really bad weather or they're really short of food or stuff like that, it tends to not make the show more fun to watch, right? So
Right.
I think that having the people who are, so the mechanic seems to be that they stay out in that, harsh camp. And if they stay long enough, I guess something else happens. But they can leave anytime they want. And so it's kind of just like an endurance challenge, so to speak.
Yes, and it's not. It's also meant to be where it's not clear to them
Yeah.
how, like, so they don't know what the mechanism is to get out of it.
Right.
The only choice they know to get out of it is to choose to leave the show.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how they get back in.
Yeah.
So it's like really mentally tricky too.
Right.
Like, at least with Redemption, like you said, very straightforward, not just from the voting out and this is what's going to happen, but when you're actually on it, as hard as the conditions are, you understand what you're making. Like, okay, I need to make it through 3 more days and then I compete with somebody, or I make it through X number of days and then I get to do this. Like, so it is. I mean, I'm interested just because it's new and different.
Yeah.
I agree with you that has been an issue in the past, but I'm open to it.
Yeah. So I definitely hope that it proves to be an interesting and exciting addition, but I'm not super looking forward to watching Reem go through that. I mean, we kind of, she seems really kind of just bitter and upset about it at the end of this episode. So I'm just thinking, like, are we just going to have to spend 10 minutes of every episode for the next 3 weeks watching more of that?
That's what we'll find out, I guess.
All right, we'll see. In the meantime, though, that's jumping ahead a bit, of course, but we have still at the Kama tribe, we have Joe and Aubrey having their own kind of conversation of saying that, they seem to be getting along with everyone so well, but Aubrey wisely points out, we're not going to be able to help with fire forever. And in particular, we know that at least a couple of the people on that tribe do seem to want to target her in particular.
Yes. And this is what I liked about this. I feel like they could be a really good combo together.
Joe and Aubrey?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because it's not that Joe isn't as strategically like smart. Like he gets it, but just she has a different level of like kind of perception on it. Even as the simple thing of like, he gets ostensibly that he doesn't want to be the guy that just stands out and has the big target on his back, but it's just so difficult for him to do that. Whereas Aubrey's has a much more of an awareness of like what's really going on and like what, hey,
a useful paranoia.
Right. That's a great way to put it, actually. Where it's like, yeah. I mean, yeah, they really do like us because we're useful to them right now. But we can't, the things that we're doing for them right now, eventually that's not going to be that important.
Yeah, they're still targets.
Right. And then to the way that people are starting to sort of subtly target her, if at the beginning, like, they are still so strong with like Joe's personality and they're still like, they're not ready to get rid of him because he's gregarious and he's helpful and he's helping them in challenges.
So good for challenges, yeah.
Right. And he can divert and say, you know what, I'm just not ready to get rid of Aubrey. And then it just sort of shifts that conversation away. And, sorry, I forgot I had the text on my computer still.
Oh, okay.
So it's like distracted my eyes. Oh. Yeah, I'm not going to respond to it. I just kind of like locked my,
Sure, that's fine.
But yeah, no, I think so. She can keep him aware of where the issues are and like where his blind spots might be. And he can keep her part of the, social aspect of the group, which she has the potential to drift away from, when she's kind of calculating everything, and I think so. I like it. I mean, again, there's so many factors that go into like whether that can work or not, but I like it from the for now, from
Yeah.
the outset,
Yeah. So the two members of that tribe that we do see discussing perhaps targeting them slash her, we have Gavin, who's the good old Southern boy from Irwin, Tennessee, and he kind of stood out to me just because he mentioned Irwin being near Pigeon Forge, and that's close to where I'm going on my retreat vacation next week. So,
Oh,
yeah. Anyway, the he was talking with Eric, who's the firefighter, about having them be useful for now, but shouldn't be depended on. And it seemed like Eric was the one that was like he wants to get out Aubrey first. And it's interesting because on the one hand, my initial reaction to him is negative only because I like Aubrey and I don't want him to target Aubrey. So I'm not sure I would discourage him from that strategy if it wasn't for that.
right.
I mean, because from his point of view, as opposed to my point of view of wanting Aubrey on the show, from his point of view, I don't know that his strategy is bad.
No, it's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. He wants a new player to win. You have to get rid of the old players to do that. Yeah. Meanwhile, this is where we had what turned out to be the inflection point of the episode, which is over on the Manu Beach. Reem apparently decided of her own volition that people who were hanging up their clothes to dry actually really wanted her to, without permission, move their clothes onto the sand on the beach as theoretically a better way to dry them out and get them sandy, but moving them without permission.
Yeah, it was an odd decision.
Well, it's
And especially with like how emphatically like she just decided like, well, this is what we're gonna do,
yeah,
or I'm gonna do. Yeah,
right. For one, the fact that she later tried to claim that she did not want to be seen as the mom, it's kind of a very mom thing to do.
yes,
It's an extremely mom thing to do. But furthermore, it's like the piece she's missing is that when later when they're mad and she realizes that they're mad, first of all, like the fact that she didn't seem to pick up on that at all until tribal council when they laid it out explicitly suggests to me that she was not very in tune to what they wanted. If she had been, I mean, she probably wouldn't have done it in the first place. But when she just says, all you guys had to tell me was not to do that. And I'm kind of thinking, this is the first episode of Survivor. All anybody has to go on are first impressions. And why is it on them to correct your behavior when what you could have done is ask them if they want you to move their clothes onto the beach? Like, oh, I saw you had your clothes hung up. I think they'd dry faster if they would be on the beach. I can move them if you want. But no, she just did it without asking so that when they go to find their clothes, they're not where they left them and they don't know why and they have to find them. Like, that's, it was well intentioned, but poorly thought through, and she's not apparently a very good communicator about it. So, anyway, it was kind of a bizarre thing to do, like that. I think it's this weird sort of vicious cycle, I think, where it might be possible for someone who's a little bit more in tune with the rest of the tribe to recover from something like that better than she did. But if this hypothetical person were better able to recover from it, it's probably a person that wouldn't have done it in the first place.
that's kind of where I was thinking. It's like it's the combination of that you're describing is very unlikely to exist. The whole reason she didn't think she needed to ask them is because she doesn't think about how they feel
Well, it's like
about stuff.
it's a very controlling behavior. It is, I'm going to do something nice for you without stopping to actually think about whether you want me to do that or not. You know, I am making the decision for you that this thing I'm doing is nice thing without actually stopping to consider whether or not they will agree.
Right.
So it's like, again, I feel like it's well meaning, but but ultimately inconsiderate, not considerate. She thinks, oh, I'm doing a nice thing for them, but I think if she was able to hear their criticism, it would be, it's nice that you wanted to do something nice for me, but you should find out what I want before doing something that you think I want.
Well, and yeah, and that was kind of how she expressed it too, is like, well, this is what you should want, as opposed to, finding that out. Like it's almost like in at first I was thinking of that as almost like just sort of a weird, like she almost butchered sort of the idea of like, okay, if you say you ordered all your colleagues cheese pizza for lunch because it was a hard day at work, okay? Mm-hmm. Some of them may not like pizza, some of them may be on diets, some of them may be lactose intolerant, something like that. But nobody's angry at you, like, because you made a nice gesture. Like that's just sort of a simple, like, and it's almost like she felt like that's what this was, but it isn't the same thing.
Right.
Like you're taking it'd be like if you went and you decided to like take all your colleagues' lunch and like prepare it a certain way for them, like their own lunches that they brought.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, I got your Tupperware out of the office refrigerator and heated it up in the microwave for you.
Right.
That would be, like, people would say, well, wait a minute, though.
Yeah, like, that was a cold pasta salad. I didn't want it heated. Well, you should want it heated because it's better that way.
And all you have to do is tell me that you don't like it and I won't do it next time.
Right.
And everyone's like, who asked you to do it in the first place?
Right.
Yeah. Or, the example I was thinking of was, it's like going to a dinner party at your friend's house and taking it of your own volition to rearrange, like re-alphabetize their books on their bookshelf or something. Like, oh, no, this is better. This is a better way to do it.
Right. That I think that's the key piece in any of the analogies, is that's where she really lost me. Mm-hmm. Yes, the fact of doing it was a terrible idea, but the attitude of, well, why wouldn't you be just like grateful for it? It's the right thing to do. Like, I'm doing the right thing that you should want to happen. Mm-hmm. And then to be like, to the same thing and be like, well, oh, how come I never get invited to your dinner parties anymore? Because you alphabetize my books. Oh, well, why didn't you ask me not to do it?
Yeah. All you had to do was tell me that you don't like that and I won't do it the next time. It's like, yeah, well, I don't have to tell people things like that usually. Yeah. They'd be
like, I kind of hinted at it and you told me that you were doing it because it was in my best interest, and I just didn't. I just kind of let it go and stopped inviting you.
Well, like it's jumping ahead to the tribal council, but that whole conversation was such a perfect, like, she was doing exactly the thing. Like, they were trying to diplomatically say, here's how you're rubbing us the wrong way. And she proceeded to do exactly that by demanding that they justify their feelings about it. Was frustrating. And the thing is that, like, on a certain level, I feel for her because it's clear she really doesn't understand. And, like, I don't want to, infantilize her or anything. Like, she's a grown adult, she's responsible for her own behavior. But the fact that she left that conversation feeling bullied and like it's unfair that they're singling her out for trying to do something nice is frustrating, because she clearly just really doesn't get what it was that she did that was wrong. Right. That's upsetting. in any event, it's kind of the flip side of that all would be when people say, "Why did you do that?" She could have just said, "You know what? I'm sorry. I was thinking that it would be better, but I should have asked. I'm sorry. I won't do it again." Instead of making it this federal thing about like, "Well, I was doing something nice for you and you just, I can't believe you're mad at me for that," and making it this whole drama thing where like she's practically forcing everybody to say that they hate her when that's not what they're saying. It started with, I think, War Dog just saying, "Sometimes you're a little, when you're a little much." And she's like, "Well, what do you mean I'm a little much? Explain
Like
to me
that,
5 different things that I've done that were too much."
like this.
Like this, right now. What you're doing right now, this is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
too
So
much.
anyway, so I feel bad in some ways for Reem. Like we've seen this in the past. Like that, there are some people who just they don't get along with people. They seem like they're maybe just a little too used to doing things their way, and they don't mesh as well with the group. It happens.
Yes.
So in any event, even past the clothes thing, we see just another example of Keith trying to reach out and bond with her, not realizing that calling her a mom is like a hot button, apparently.
Right. He's looking at, like, he's taking the thing that is annoying all of the rest of them and saying, "Oh, I kind of miss like having a mom figure around. Maybe she can like be a mom figure out here for me."
Mm-hmm.
And telling her that in like a way that he meant like in a nice, like a compliment.
Yeah.
And then her going off on him about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I think that that kind of, well, so, but then, she does offer to help him with swimming, and that's a nice thing to do. And then Wendy ends up helping too. And so it seems like they're kind of bonding, but unfortunately, everyone else is looking at the three of them out there and saying, "Well, gosh, there's a couple of the people that we were thinking about maybe as potential targets, and they're self-isolating."
Yes.
So, that said, I mean, we talked about this briefly earlier that, it seemed like, I wonder if with Keith, if some of the whole thing was really just sort of a lack of confidence in it. Like he was just kind of got flustered at the, beginning. Like he kind of knew what to do, the basics of it, but kind of panicked a little bit maybe in the ocean. Jumping off the boat. Because I just mean, in what appeared to be an afternoon, he made progress from almost drowning and having to be rescued to fairly respectable breaststroke for, and someone who couldn't swim at all an hour before.
Yeah, and what I was is that, he.
No, I wasn't. It was a crawl, not a breaststroke.
It was a crawl.
Yeah, it was a crawl.
Yeah, and he probably, I mean, he you could tell even in the ocean, like he's aware of how to swim.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a strong swimmer.
He knows intellectually what he's supposed to do.
Right, and he probably has swam in a pool to a point of like being able to survive in it. And to your point, that's a little different, and so what they were probably able to do was just calm him down and let him realize that whatever swimming he's done in a pool, the ocean really is just a lot bigger.
Yeah,
and
moves around a
little bit more.
Yeah.
But if you just calm down and do what you're supposed to do, like you can still swim, and that's probably more of what they did for him.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, so that was kind of nice, and it's really kind of unfortunate that they were all sort of in a little bit of a sinking ship, so to speak. But that brings us to the challenge. It was nice seeing such a big obstacle course, and I really liked the element where it was a group obstacle course, but there were individual, more difficult pieces that had to be done by one person.
Yeah.
And then there was the additional strategy of like, it initially seemed like the idea was one person goes over the complicated balance beam, then they untie the knots, and then they make it easier. but then they sort of determined midway through, oh, but you actually, if more people can make it over the complicated part, they can all help with the knots, and makes that whole thing faster.
Right.
And so that was all. I liked those challenge pieces. Um, Poor Wentworth got what I guess was maybe like a rope burn on her forehead. It seemed like.
I don't know if it was that or if she banged it on the corner of the wood.
Yeah, maybe.
Because
Yeah,
she was like,
pretty
yeah,
significant red mark, like here and on her nose a little bit.
yeah, because she was doing like the balance beam crossing, and it said she
Hmm.
banged her head, but it wasn't clear if she like kind of like skipped it, like
I
not like bang like concussion bang, but
yeah.
like kind of like just sort of brushed on that or the rope, one or the other.
So
Yeah.
I think it was the rope, just because I did rewind it to watch the clip again. And it's not a perfect angle, but it did look like she kind of, like a falling tree, went off the side. She didn't like fall forward onto the balance beam as far as I could tell, but she did kind of land face first in the net.
Okay.
So I thought at first maybe she hit like the frame or something of the net, like hit some other piece like of the net on the edge of it or something, but I don't know.
I feel like
It looked like it hurt no matter what it was.
it hurt no matter what, but I was even thinking when they didn't do any kind of at least televised, medical or concussion protocol,
Mhm.
that she couldn't have just like slammed her head on a piece of wood
Mhm.
corner. I feel like they would have taken a step back with
Yeah.
her as opposed to just like, oh, your face is kind of bumped up. And
Well,
again,
yeah.
medical may have looked at her, but it wasn't. I think they would have made a bigger deal if she'd hit her head on a piece
Yeah,
of
I mean, Probst.
stone.
Yeah, he kind of yelled out if she was okay, but she kind of said she was, but so maybe they were just kind of monitoring just to make sure she wasn't walking funny or something after that. But in terms of being dizzy is what I mean. But it was a cool challenge. The puzzle, I think, was a little bit more complicated than it might have initially appeared, because it was not equivalent to a tiny version of that slide puzzle. The pieces being so big made a difference, because there were times where they had the piece in what really kind of should have been the right spot, but if it wasn't, just if it was just like sitting a tiny bit crooked, which there was room for it to do, it would prevent you from moving the other pieces, even if theoretically the pieces are in the right spots. We saw
Yes.
them struggling with that a couple of times.
Yeah, and it had just a slightly. I mean, I'm sure there are slide puzzles that have the mechanic that this had, but it
Mm-hmm.
was slightly different than like matching up a pattern. Like the fact of having to like open up the part so that the big piece could slide out.
Yeah.
Is, again, I'm sure there are puzzles like that, but it's
Yeah.
not
Well,
it's not as common.
right. Yeah.
You
I
know.
mean, they've had puzzles like that, but certainly the big pieces makes it complicated too.
Yeah.
Um, So, in any event, though, the Kama tribe had a fairly significant lead coming into the puzzle, and even though the Manu tribe was able to get in there and start working on it for a bit, it's hard to know exactly how long that phase was. But the Kama tribe ultimately was still able to prevail, and so
They they made it seem a lot closer than it really was with the editing.
yeah.
Because I remember that they were saying, "Oh, it could just be whoever can move the pieces the quickest or whatever," and then it did the wide shot when they won,
Yeah.
and the other piece was not.
They
It
were
was
they were
too
not
broad.
close. Yeah.
Yeah, they were not close. They still had plenty of work to do to get there.
Hmm.
They may have identified what needed to happen, but they had definitely not made it work.
Right. Right. So we have so we spend the rest of the episode back at the Manu camp, and here's where we had at the water, at the well, we had Reem and Keith and Wendy approaching Rick, aka Devons, about separating Kelly and Lauren, but it kind of imploded almost immediately, because Keith was just feeling immediately like, wait, this is my alliance? When did that happen? I'm not sure I like this. I'm gonna go blow it up. Which I don't know. I can't really blame him for. Realizing that he was in a spot where we're 3 out of 9, and one of the most vocal, headstrong member of our three is one of the targets from the other side and is pushing people, around and me and like I think he
Yeah,
did the right thing for his own game.
100%, like 100% the
Yeah.
right thing for him. Like, yeah, get out of that situation. Like that was no win. Like you would have
Mhm.
just, yeah,
Yeah.
he
So I
good for
thought
him.
I thought it was interesting the reaction though that the rest of the group had, which seemed to be we already were maybe kind of thinking about voting for Reem, but if Reem and Wendy are close, we kind of want to know what's Wendy's deal with that, right? Like, will she work with us to get rid of Reem, or what's going to happen there? And I thought that was really interesting to so David and War Dog basically approach Wendy to kind of feel her out in that regard, and um, mixed feelings about Wendy's performance in that scene because obviously she didn't help her case with War Dog specifically, but it's also kind of like like his read on her was that she was stubborn and unreasonable and didn't express any interest in working with them. Kind of like, well, no matter what, I am going to vote with her just out of loyalty, even if we don't have the numbers to. Like, even if you are going to successfully vote her out, I'm going to vote with her just from loyalty, and you can't change my mind on the subject. Like, I can see why his reaction was, well, gosh, she's, not someone we can work with. But I don't know. On the other hand, if she is loyal to an alliance after 2 days, if you could get her to be loyal to you,
I feel like that's what maybe she was trying to do is to. I mean, that's her personality, and then she was just kind of owning
mm-hmm.
that as opposed to like going against her instinct. I don't know. You
Yeah,
know.
it was a little bit of a weird feeling scene because I think my original reaction was a bit like War Dog's, not necessarily that he should then target her, but she did not make herself approachable as someone they could work with in the future.
No, what well, and she also made their decision really easy because now they could split votes and not have to worry about an idol
Yeah.
because they were also willing to get rid of her.
Yeah.
Had
It's
you know,
like, but what she did from a strategic point of view is to say, in the very first episode of a new season, I am willing to be the one person who stands by the one who goes home against the will of the other 7 people. That's just like, I mean, loyalty's nice, and we can see where I think she maybe had an instinct to want to protect Reem because she could see, like, she tried to do it during the tribal council too, of trying to defend her a little bit in the sense of like, okay, well, maybe she didn't handle the clothes thing very well, but she did mean it to be something nice. She wasn't trying to mess with you guys. She was trying to help, and even if she didn't do it well, that's a communication failure, not something else, right? And so we could
right,
see maybe that she's wanting to defend her in that regard, and like, oh, it's a little bit unfair to target her. And I think also Reem's objection that the idea that the ostensible stated reason for why Reem might be targeted is to keep the tribe strong, and she's like, well, who says I'm not strong? Like, she hasn't had any opportunity to demonstrate not being strong. Like, why is that the assumption? And even if that's the case, why would it not be Wendy instead of Reem? So, or Kelly. Although I think that's a little bit of, it's like Kelly got hurt. I didn't get hurt. It's like, well, yeah, but Kelly's been on other seasons before and has demonstrated herself as good at challenges. So,
Yes, and it's like that was another comment when like people are like, "You're a bit much." Like that's a bit much to be like, "Well, Kelly got hurt, so you should. If that's your reasoning, you should target her." It's like,
yeah.
look, that's like just like no, that's not.
Well, it's like the it's the awkward, uncomfortable situation of people who occasionally make kind of force you to say things meaner than you want them to be because they don't get it otherwise.
Right.
Like you try to be polite and diplomatic and gentle about it, and it just blows right past them, and you kind of end up having to state things more forcefully so that they hear you, and then it feels like you're the one being mean. It seems
Yep.
like Reem kind of is that sort of person.
Yes.
Um, in any event, War Dog briefly discusses that she should go. I think you are absolutely right, though, that she did not become the new target, but she became. We easily have the numbers required to split the votes, so we might as well do that just in case.
Right, because we're willing to. If in the case that she has an idol, we are more willing to let Wendy go than anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we'll just go ahead and split to her.
Yeah. And one of the other things that Dalton Ross mentions is that something that wasn't in the aired tribal council was that Wendy apparently did tell Lauren ahead of time that, that's where she was casting her vote. And so I think it was kind of one of those things of she had made the decision to stay loyal to Reem, even though she knew that wasn't going to happen. There was no saving her, and so I think that explains why, like, she didn't even vote for the same person as Reem did.
Right.
Yeah. So we can debate the merits of the strategy where you vote for someone out of loyalty, even though you know they're going when that person isn't even going to be on the jury. Like, I'm not sure you really gain anything from that, but
Yeah, I mean, if it's true to who you are and you're hoping that you'll convince others that like see how loyal I can be to
yeah.
you, maybe
Like, I think
I
you
don't
could
think
you could that proposition could be sold, but she didn't sell it very well.
no.
Yeah. So hopefully, I hope that Wendy can kind of recover from this stumble, because I kind of like her otherwise, but she's ended up isolated here. Not entirely just from bad luck, but somewhat to her own.
Right, and that's why I said like the best case scenario for her is that they get a couple of wins and she's able to, now that this whole like I'm going to be loyal to Reem thing is out of the way, like she can rebuild relationships with people that are kind of separate from that,
Mm-hmm,
which is what I
mm-hmm.
was trying to get at like earlier. Like that's the way that she could do it. If they come right back to another tribal council, like unless somebody has some cockamamie idea about trying to get rid of a end game threat early on or some nonsense, like she's going to be the easy target, and that's just unfortunate. But she did kind of draw that line in the sand by saying like I'm staying on this side, I'm staying in the minority no matter
Yes.
what. Okay, so if you go to the next tribal council, it's like, well, you said you were in the minority, so let's get rid of you, and then we're done with the 2-person minority.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and I'm not really rooting for anyone at this point, so I'm just kind of watch, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
while I like her, I'm not going to be rooting for their tribe simply to let her get a chance to get back
Right.
into it.
No, I agree. I mean, I think that she's got some ground to recover, and I hope that she has the opportunity to do that, but it's still going to be on her to, there's a little bit of damage control needed, I think.
Yeah.
But so at the tribal council, Probst even commented on how it's rare that a tribal council seems so exclusively focused on one specific issue, namely Reem rubs people the wrong way and seems to not get it at all in terms of people trying to explain what they're feeling, and she talks over them, and she distorts their argument as though they've said something that they didn't say, and they find the whole thing frustrating to the point where even a guy who is in law school and comes from a military like school background and goes by the name War Dog basically did the fine, you're right, let's stop talking about this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, as you pointed out, like it was so focused on one topic because the very topic they were focused on, she flared it back up by her response to them bringing it up at the beginning. Like it was the start of what they talked about, and she responded in a way that just elucidated all of their points.
Yeah.
And so they just kept talking about the same thing, to, like you said, to the point where someone had to say, look, we need to stop talking about this. Mm-hmm. This is all, we're all in agreement.
Yeah. I think one of maybe the critical flaws in her sort of whole mindset about the whole thing is that she's approaching it from a conflict resolution mindset of, if we all need to get along, then there should be communication of, if I did something you don't like and you want me to not do it, then you can just tell me. But this is a competition show where someone has to get voted out, and it's all based on first impressions. And in this case, they are telling you that now by voting for you. You know, as opposed to who, and she never came up really with any sort of a reasonable alternative for who else it should be. Like this idea of, we got to break up Kelly and Lauren already on day 3. I don't know. I don't think anybody even really bought that for a second. But so here's, she gets voted out, and she walks out claiming, ridiculous, so lame, I hope it pours down rain on those people. And she's kind of just bitter about the whole thing. And then, like, as she goes and she finds this shipwreck set, because it's so obviously a constructed thing and not like an actual shipwreck, which is fine. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's just like, it's not subtle. I mean, you can see it in the logo. You can see the little ribs of the ship thing. This like, just like the, anyway. My concern about this twist, and I hope to be proven wrong, is that I just watched that last little bit of her sitting there around that campfire miserable and complaining about her tribe still. And I'm just thinking, so we just get to watch that until she either gets so miserable that she quits anyway, or B, gets back on the show? Those are the two choices right now.
Well, and that's why my alternative is that the experience humbles her to where she can be more reflective on how she was acting, and if she does make it back on the show, she will behave in a different way.
I hope so. That would be, I sincerely do. That would be great. And who knows, there might be other twists we don't see coming. I don't know how it works. Like, if presumably it's not something where she gets to come back at any time. So is it gradually the edge of extinction becomes like everybody? Like the person who gets voted out next time joins her in the same spot, and then the third person in the same spot, and they're all there? Like, how is that how it's going to work?
I don't know. I was thinking about that too. Like, do they all go to the same spot, or do they all have like sort of a similarly barren different spot? And they're all just kind of living it out, and basically whoever, like, at whatever point they get to come back in, whoever hasn't like opted out at that point, like, gets to come back and maybe compete to be in, or maybe they all get to be back in.
Yeah, like
almost like the Navy SEAL, like, ring the bell kind of thing, like and
yeah, like, well, so that sounds likely to me, at least in the sense that they can all leave at any time, but they're all going to hang out there until maybe one person get by either lasting till the all the others drop out, or through some other competition mechanism, only one of them gets to come back in.
Right.
That
That
sounds
would make
likely to
sense.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, quitting is such a heightened thing in Survivor that I can't help but feel like a mechanism that is designed to be, we're going to make people so miserable that they'll quit of their own volition. Aw, puppy. He's not on the edge of extinction.
He's acting like he is because it's past his dinner time.
Oh no. Well, in any event, we will
We're
see
wrapping
how
up,
that
bud.
develops. So,
We're wrapping up.
um, I think maybe next time we on the scenes from next time we got some indications that the returning players are going to be targets. Um, I think that's really kind of mostly all we got, but we'll see what continues. Brief programming note though is that I'm out of town next week, so we'll have to figure out when we can record for the next episode, but we'll figure that out on our own. And
Yeah,
so,
it'll be whenever you get back. We'll find a time.
yes. And so, also, if you are watching this now, we're going to finish this stream, but then after a brief break, we're going to resume and talk about movies.
Yes.
Continue.
Bye.
All right, so we'll stop Survivor for now. So good night, everybody. But if you're watching live, keep watching. We'll be back in a little bit for movies.
As soon as this doggy gets fed.